and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange will face a full extradition hearing next year over computer hacking and spying allegations in the United States of America. The hearing will begin on 25th of February 2020 and is expected to last 5 days. It will decide if Assange will be sent to the US to be prosecuted over the leaks of classified documents. Earlier this week, UK's Home Secretary Sajid Javid approved an extradition request from the US for Assange to face criminal charges. Julian Assange faces 18 charges on leaking classified information published by WikiLeaks. US prosecutors allege he conspired with former US Army Private Chelsea Manning to obtain the material that included State Department diplomatic cables and documents on the wars both in Iraq and Afghanistan. So currently, Assange is serving a 50-week sentence in Belmarsh prison in southeast London for bail violations after taking refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in a bid to avoid extradition to Sweden to face rape charges in 2012. Today in In-Depth, we take a look at the cases against Julian Assange in the United States and the process of extradition to America. We also trace Julian Assange's journey from a computer programmer to a hacker and then a fugitive. Earlier this week, on June 12th, UK Home Secretary Sajid Javid signed an order to extradite WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange following a request from the US government. By certifying the request, the Home Secretary rubber-stamped it for consideration by the court. The decision now lies with the UK courts to analyse if the case meets all the tests required for Assange's extradition to the US. Assange, who faces an 18-count indictment by the US Justice Department, had been too ill to appear before Westminster Magistrates Court at a scheduled hearing last month. So during his latest hearing on Friday, Assange appeared via video before the Westminster Magistrates, and defending himself and his website WikiLeaks against hacking claims, Assange told the court that WikiLeaks is nothing but a publisher. He also added that 175 years of his life is effectively at stake. Assange is accused by US authorities of conspiring to hack US government computers and also violating an espionage law. He is due to return to court in October ahead of next year's full hearing, where he will oppose being extradited to the US. Besides, an investigation has also been reopened into an allegation of rape in Sweden, which Assange has always denied. So after spending nearly 2,500 days in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, Julian Assange was arrested in April this year on charges of breaching his bail conditions of 2012. His arrest came after the Ecuadorian embassy in London withdrew its asylum to Assange. Assange is currently in Belmarsh prison on the outskirts of London, serving a 50-week sentence for jumping bail, and is also facing extradition to the United States for alleged computer hacking and leaking highly classified documents. Assange supporters, although, call him a campaigner for truth, but many also criticize him for endangering lives by putting out sensitive information into the public domain. In our next report, we look at the journey of Julian Assange and the multiple charges against him. Born on 3rd July 1971 in Queensland, Australia, Julian Assange was a journalist, computer programmer and activist. Assange had an unusual childhood, spending most of his early years traveling with his mother. He ended up attending roughly 37 different schools growing up and was frequently homeschooled. He studied programming, mathematics and physics at the college level in Australia, but did not complete a degree. Assange discovered his passion for computers as a teenager, and at the age of 16, he got his first computer as a gift from his mother. Before long, he developed a talent for hacking into computer systems. In 2006, Assange began work on WikiLeaks, a website intended to collect and share confidential information on an international scale. The site officially launched in 2007 and operated out of Sweden because of the country's strong laws on protecting a person's anonymity. Later that year, WikiLeaks released a US military manual that provided detailed information on the Guantanamo detention center. Assange acquired international attention in April 2010 when WikiLeaks released footage showing US soldiers shooting dead 18 civilians from a helicopter in Iraq. This information was provided to WikiLeaks by whistleblower and former US Army soldier Chelsea Manning. Soon after, Sweden issued an arrest warrant for Assange on 2 separate charges of rape and molestation. Assange claimed that both encounters were consensual and he feared being extradited from Sweden to the United States following the leaks. In December 2010, Assange was arrested in London but was given bail after his supporters paid £240,000 in cash and sureties. In 2012, the UK Supreme Court ruled Assange be extradited to Sweden to face questioning over the allegations. But Assange was granted political asylum by Ecuador and began his stay at the country's embassy in London. The South American nation said it granted him asylum because his human rights might be violated if he was extradited. In August 2015, Swedish prosecutors dropped their investigation into the alleged rape because of time restrictions. Meanwhile, as Assange's case continued to get international attention, a UN panel ruled that Assange has been arbitrarily detained by UK and Swedish authorities. Soon after, Assange filed an appeal to a Swedish court, arguing that the countries must comply with the UN panel's findings. In 2017, former US President Barack Obama announced the decision to free Chelsea Manning, prompting speculation that Assange will end his self-imposed exile. At a press conference, Assange said he would go to the United States provided he is not arrested. Assange's appeal was rejected by the United States, saying his arrest is a priority for the government. The same year in December, Assange was granted citizenship by Ecuador. However, in October 2018, Assange confirmed that he will launch legal action against the government of Ecuador, accusing it of violating his fundamental rights and freedoms. Later in December, Assange's lawyer rejected an agreement announced by Ecuador's president to see him leave the Ecuadorian embassy. Assange was arrested in London after his diplomatic status was revoked.
See, America is a very powerful country. Australia, he is an Australian citizen, but Australia immediately said, we have nothing to do with this. We can't protect you. Ecuador at that time had a leftist government. And many governments in Latin America have very strong feelings against the United States because United States government and CIA time and again interfere in their internal politics. There are many times coup and what different political reasons. So Ecuador was a country which was willing to, in a way, challenge the United States and accept Assange as a political refugee in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and later in I think 2017 he also got Ecuadorian nationality.
After his arrest, Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno said the country had reached its limit with the behavior of Assange. The country accused him of engaging in political activities which are not allowed when claiming asylum. Ecuador claims Assange is still linked to WikiLeaks and therefore involved in interfering in internal affairs of other states. Ecuador's allegations against Assange also include blocking security cameras at the embassy, accessing security files and confronting guards. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Julian Assange faces 18 charges in the United States, including conspiring to hack into a government computer. US officials say he unlawfully published the names of classified sources and conspired with and assisted former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning in obtaining access to classified information. In our next report, we talk about the charges that Assange faces in America.
Julian Assange could face decades in a US prison on charges of violating the Espionage Act by publishing classified information through WikiLeaks. Prosecutors announced 17 additional charges against Assange for publishing hundreds of thousands of secret diplomatic cables and files on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Assange was previously charged with working to hack a Pentagon computer system in a secret indictment that was unveiled soon after his arrest at Ecuador's embassy in London last month. The WikiLeaks founder faces a maximum sentence of 175 years in prison in the US if convicted of all the charges against him. The new charges against Assange raise profound questions about the freedom of the press under the First Amendment of the US Constitution. They may also complicate Washington's attempts to extradite him from London. The United States is alleging that Assange conspired with and aided and abetted Chelsea Manning to remove US classified documents. The new indictment, approved by a grand jury in Virginia, detailed how Assange and WikiLeaks published troves of documents that they received from Chelsea Manning, then a US Army intelligence analyst. The unsealed indictment details allegations of Assange seeking classified information and Manning running searches on classified systems for such information and allegedly downloading 4 databases containing 90,000 Afghanistan war activity reports, 400,000 reports on Iraq war, 800 Guantanamo Bay detainee assessment briefs, and 250,000 cables from the US Department of State. The new indictment also contains the password hash cracking allegations unsealed last month and revealed that copies of WikiLeaks published document were allegedly found in the compound of Osama bin Laden. The recent indictment says that Manning had responded to public appeals from Assange in 2009 for people with access to classified information to leak it to WikiLeaks, violating their legal obligations to keep it secret. The two share the objective of furthering WikiLeaks' mission as an intelligence agency of the people to subvert US laws by disclosing classified information to public, according to the indictment. As they discuss the leak over the online chats, prosecutors say that Assange knew, understood, and fully anticipated that Manning was illegally providing him with classified records containing national defense information of the United States. Assange is facing up to a maximum of 10 years imprisonment on each count if found guilty, except for the count relating to conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, which carries 5 years. With inputs from Mohammad Fateh Tipu, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Supporters of Julian Assange have been protesting against his extradition to the United States. In fact, dozens of them gathered outside London's Westminster Magistrates Court on June 14, just before the court announced that a full extradition hearing will take place in February next year. Supporters carrying Free Julian Assange banners stood outside the Westminster Magistrates Court in London.
Free Julian Assange!
Stop the torture! Stop their lives!
Free Julian Assange!
Bail offence, that is a minor offence, in a maximum security prison, Belmarsh, in solitary confinement 23 hours a day, is unable to realistically talk to his lawyers, is totally isolated, and is now ill as a consequence. He published the truth, 100% accuracy by WikiLeaks, and now he is being persecuted, tortured and detained.
I think it will send a very strong negative message as far as free media, WikiLeaks, etc. is concerned, because this will then send out a message that any individual, in terms of investigative journalism, they'll have to be very, very careful, because, in the case of Assange, we see he is not a US citizen. He's an Australian citizen. He is not even based in the United States. He's based outside, and he's, of course, been able to unearth some of the documents that are considered to be protected under the National Security Act and so on and so forth. So I think it will put lots of constraints around people who are trying to go in for trying to ferret deep into what the governments are doing. But I don't think everything at this stage, one cannot say that everything is lost, because as I said, it's going to be a long process, it's going to be a very complex process.
A United Nations human rights investigator said that the WikiLeaks co-founder has suffered psychological torture from a defamation campaign, and he should not be extradited to the United States, fearing a politicized show trial. Nils Melzer, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, who visited Assange in a high-security London prison on the 9th of May, voiced concern at fresh US criminal charges laid against Assange and reiterated a call for him not to be extradited to America.
And our finding was that Mr. Assange shows all the symptoms of a person who has been exposed to psychological torture for a prolonged period of time. So what we're speaking about is severe stress and constant stress, chronic anxiety, severe psychological trauma. The psychiatrist that accompanied my mission said that his state of health was critical, and if he did not get urgent relief, that we would have to expect a rapid deterioration of that state of health and possibly with irreparable harm.
Let's now talk about extradition treaties that span hundreds of countries. It may be sought only for an extraditable offence, that is an offence which is included in an extradition treaty between the requesting state and the surrendering state. So in our next report, let's understand how the extradition process works in the United States of America.
The United States of America has extradition treaties with more than 100 countries. But even then, extraditions prove to be contentious. For extraditions to the United States, state or federal prosecutors decide if an extradition is worth the cost. Prosecutors then prepare an application that has to be approved by the Justice Department. Approved applications are sent to the State Department, which sends it to the relevant US Embassy that in turn forwards it to authorities in the country of refuge. From there, the process varies by country. Suspects are able to contest or appeal extradition in many countries. Upon the approval of the country of refuge, US Marshals Service escort the fugitive to the United States. The timing usually varies from case to case, but the average extradition involving the United States takes more than a year from request to surrender. Although some cases have taken more than a dozen years, while several others have been closed without a fugitive's capture. Some recent high-profile extradition cases to the United States include Chinese telecom giant Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou, who was arrested by Canadian authorities in December 2018 at the request of the United States. US prosecutors have charged her with bank and wire fraud related to Huawei's business with Iran. The extradition proceedings have garnered significant media attention given the status of the suspect and the backdrop of delicate US-China trade talks. In 2016, Turkish prosecutors filed an extradition request for Fethullah Gulen. The cleric has been living in the United States for more than 15 years. Ankara alleges that Gulen leads a terrorist organization that was behind the 2016 coup attempt against President Tayyip Erdogan. The Justice Department rejected Turkey's request, saying it failed to meet the legal standards for extradition. In 2017, the Mexican government extradited Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Loera to the United States. The former kingpin of the Sinaloa cartel faced multiple drug-related charges. In February 2019, he was convicted in a New York federal court after a 3-month trial. In April 2019, acting on a US extradition request, British authorities arrested WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange after he was evicted from the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Ecuador had granted Assange asylum in 2012 and allowed him to reside at its embassy to avoid extradition to Sweden, where he faced charges of rape and other allegations. However, Ecuador withdrew its protection, citing grievances against Assange and WikiLeaks. US authorities have charged Assange with conspiracy to hack into US government computers and release hundreds of thousands of classified documents between 2010 and 2011. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
There have been many people across the world who have sought asylum in other countries for various reasons. So here's a look at the most talked about cases of political asylum in recent times.
Many countries grant political asylum to protect someone from political persecution in his or her own country. While granting political asylum, nations consider several aspects, including their law, their diplomatic relations with the country whose citizen is being given political asylum, and reasons for which a person is seeking political asylum. Former US National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden is another example. Snowden turned whistleblower in June 2013, leaking classified information from the National Security Agency in 2013. The US government revoked his passport, after which he flew to Moscow, where he has been granted political asylum till 2020. In 1849, German citizen and thinker Karl Marx had to seek political asylum in London. Soviet revolutionary Leon Trotsky lived in Turkey, France, Norway and Mexico as a political refugee between 1929 to 1940. Tibetan spiritual leader Dalai Lama sought political asylum in India in 1959 and has been living here ever since. Nicaragua's former president Anastasio Somoza was granted political asylum in 1979 by Paraguay. Iceland offered chess champion Bobby Fischer political asylum in 2005. In 2014, Malaysia's student leader Ali Abid Jalil was granted asylum in Sweden. He was detained in Malaysia for insulting royalty. Thousands of people apply to various countries seeking political asylum, but not everyone gets it. According to United Nations Human Rights Council, over 5,000 applications seeking political asylum are pending with the Indian government. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So that's it from us in today's edition of In Depth. You can also watch our program online on YouTube and Twitter. And don't forget to send your feedback and suggestions about our program. Thank you for your time.